I'm Inside Info, and I'm a drum and bass producer, predominantly, although I do experiment with other stuff. And I've just put out an album on Viper Recordings, and today I'm going to talk you through more creative processes as opposed to niggly twiggly EQ settings and things like that, and how I go about creating a track from scratch and some of the processes involved in that. So this is my template that I start every track with, and without this, it kind of, because I have all groups and routings and everything set up, without this I get a bit lost, and it takes me a long time to recreate all the groups and stuff. So I just have this template with everything set up as I would normally work in a project. So I've got a bunch of channels here, like empty channels, which are all routed into like a drum bus. Let's get that up. Yeah, so group channels, I've got here like a bunch of drums, empty channels, which are all routed into the drums. And I've got kick, hats, percussion, breaks, which all go into a bus here, which then go into a main bus. So I can put loads of effects, EQs, distortion, saturation and things like that on it. But then the drums main is basically all the drums as it will be in the project. So that's like the master bus for the drums, if you like. And also sub bass, which is like a mono track. So I can shove the sub bass straight into that. 3 channels for like the mid range of the bass. So mid bass 1, mid bass 2, and then total bass, which is everything. So it's all the basses are routing into total bass. Synths, vocoder, which is like in Cubase, you have to set up a thing called a quadro channel to get the vocodec's working. And that's a bit of a pain in the arse to set up. So I just have that on every project, just in case I need to use it. I don't use it on every project, but it's just there. Effects. So yeah, and the template's also got, because I've got a Pro 2 here with nice external synth. It's got a software interface now. They haven't. This has not been out very long, but they've got a plugin which you can control this with. So I have that in every project as well, because it's great fun to mess around with. And also I've got the input for this. So the output of that running straight into Cubase as well, so I can just hear it straight away without having to route it. And also I've got a TT303 here, which is routed straight into the project as well. Again, I wouldn't use that for every track, but it's nice to just have there and just to play around with. Yeah, so that's the template, basically. That's it. It's just really handy to have all the routings and everything sorted. A couple of effects channels I've got created as well. I just find that a bit more easier to work with than just a completely blank page, because when you've just got a totally blank page, that's a little bit intimidating from starting from scratch all the time. So that's my template. I tend to update the template if I've got a new piece of gear that I have to integrate with almost every track. So also the master bus has a couple of master plugins that I use on every track as well. So I've got the Slate digital master bus here, just in case I need to adjust the gain and stuff of the track before the limiter. I use this a lot as well. This is a plugin called Magic AB2, and it enables me to quickly A/B flick between 2 tracks. So I have like a bunch of references loaded up in each one of these, and then I'll just flick between them just to see where I'm at levels wise and everything at the later stages of the tune. In the initial stages I won't A/B with anything really, because it's just a creative kind of thing, but later on once I want to see if my mixdowns are up to par and stuff, I'll use this a lot, and it's great. It's a really cool plugin. The reference tracks tends to change with what's current and just stuff that I like. I don't know, like different. I don't reference the same tracks all the time, because it depends on the track that I'm working on. So I'll always try and find a track that's in a similar ballpark to A/B to, There are soundtracks that seem to cover fundamental things like loudness and stuff, but stuff like sort of a reference for things like warmth and stereo width as well. And yeah, new music comes out all the time. And I also don't just have music from the same genre to reference to as well. I like to reference to different genres and even different time periods. Like I find it quite interesting to reference a track from like a modern drum and bass track to a track from the 80s or something by Quincy Jones or something. When those guys back then were just phenomenal with their production techniques, and even now when you listen to them, the stereo width and everything just stands up so well. It's incredible. So that's something I do quite a lot. And then I've also got Span on the master as well, which is just a fantastic plug-in for a spectrum analyzer. And that just gives me a bit more detail as to where my frequencies are sitting. I do also have this analyzer here, which I've had for years, and it's just, well, one, I love the way it looks. It's just like having sort of a spaceship in front of your face, I guess. And two, it provides you with a good EQ reference point. I know where, I can just look at this and be like, right, my kick's sitting at 100, my bass is down here. It's just a really cool visual thing to have, and Span just sort of does that in a bit more detail, I guess. So when I start a new piece of music, I like to have in my head an idea or a theme, or just a starting point to go with, which may or may not end up being included in the final track, but just to have a starting point rather than just sitting down with a bunch of synths and lights and knobs and things and flashing at me with no real direction. So what I do is I'll create a folder in my music projects hard drive, and I'll literally just dump a folder into tracks 2017, and I generally won't give it a name to begin with, but I'll start going through my sample library and just finding sounds that I like, like stabs and things like that, and just things that I'm feeling at the moment, like that sort of convey the mood that I'm in or the direction that I want to go in. And also what I'll do is I'll create field recordings. So what I'll do is I'll take this field recorder with me. Just anywhere, I'll record sounds in the house, or I'll go out with a friend or something and we'll just walk around and record some sounds. But I find this really, really indispensable for capturing just getting sounds that you don't get elsewhere, and just having like a little reference point of stuff that nobody's gonna have heard before. This is really essential, I think. So I'll record a bunch of field recordings as well, and I'll dump them into the folder. I'll even sometimes just create a few patches with synths as well and dump them in, or make some pads or some keys and things like that, some stabs and stuff, and just dump them all into a folder. And then once I've got that folder, I've got I've got sounds to pick at once the track's rolling, because I find that when you've sort of got your fundamentals down, you've got your drums down and you've got your bass down and you've got your core elements down, having those sounds to kind of sort of chuck in, even if they're not in the right key, or they're just sounds that kind of chuck in, you end up and relocating them and moving about and stuff is normally always manage to get something rolling from that. And as well, just to have sounds to use as percussion that are not typical things like percussion, like bongo. Instead of just loading bongos, I'll slap some field recordings on there of me I've made tunes of me just typing, just keyboard sounds like that, or hitting the desk or hitting anything. But yeah, so that's where I start basically. And from that point, from that folder as well, once I've got a bunch of sounds in a folder, I will then start creating sounds with those sounds. So I'll start loading those samples into UVI Falcon, or I'll start filtering them through the external input into the Pro 2 and stuff like that, just to create new sounds. I'll even start. I've got a really cool plugin called Synaptic Morph, which I'll show you now actually. Okay, great. So this plugin here is one of my new favorite things. You can morph between two sounds, and it uses some crazy spectral algorithm to do that. And you just get new, really cool, exciting sounds. It's quite similar to a vocoder in the way that it works, but it's definitely got a different sound to it. So let me take two sounds. For example, I will take a vocal sound, I think. That'll do. And let's put it in here. I will take a stab sound. There we go. So let's just I'll just, oh hang on, let's turn off the okay, quantization. There we go. So if you route it in properly, this is again why I always have the vocoder channel set up, because the vocoder channel works with this morph plugin, which I use a lot. So I have to route one sound into the stereo section of the Quadro channel, and then the other channel into the stereo LR channel of the Quadro channel. And then we can use morph to morph between the two sounds. If I can see where I've put morph. Here we go. Okay. So now I can just got a great formant filter as well on this, and a reverb. So all the while I'm sort of messing around and creating these sounds and messing sounds together and things like that, I'll have SoundForge running in the background. And that is basically capturing everything that I'm doing. So rather than just like, you know, finding a sweet spot and then recording it, I just literally have this rolling, and it's recording the computer output. So everything that's happening, it's creating a waveform for. And then what I'll do, once I've finished tweaking and messing around, is I will just stop SoundForge recording and then go through the waveform, and actually no, what I'll do is, first of all, I'll go and take a break, I'll make some food, or I'll disconnect myself from the session. I find that to be important actually. If you've done a sound design session, you sort of tend to remember what the good bits were and flick and sort of look for them. So what I do is I'll disconnect from the session by going to do something else, or even working on something else, or going to the pub or something. Actually, that's not true. I haven't been to the pub for ages. I need to go to the pub. There's more pubs. And then I'll just go back in and scan through the waveform and pick all the best bits. And then save them into the folder, or a folder, or the folder that I've created. And then I've got like new sounds that I know nobody's got, and they're sort of fresh, and I don't know, they're homemade. It's like using homemade ingredients to make a pie or something like that, you know, rather than sticking pre-made ingredients. It's just nice to have. And also, you've got a bank of sounds that you can use in pretty much any track. You know, if you sort of when you're writing another track that's completely disconnected from this one, you can go back and scan through all the other sounds you've made for other tracks, and you'll find new bits that you can use and stuff. So that's generally what I'll do, and only then will I then start to sort of sit down and start writing the actual music, which I suppose I'll go into now, I guess. I know when it's time to start writing a track when I feel really excited. Like I feel like, holy crap, that sound that I made was, I can't wait to use that. And I'm just really buzzing for like I just really want to get all these sounds into a tune. That's when I know that I'm ready to roll. When I feel excited to start writing a piece of music, as opposed to me sitting down and feeling like I've got to write a piece. You know what I mean? It's always about getting your juices flowing and being, I can't wait to use this. Can't wait to check out to show people this sound that I've done, or this melody that I've written or something. That's when I know it's time. So my main plugin that I seem to be using a lot for multiple things at the moment is UVI Falcon, and it's kind of like a workstation synth, if you like. It's got sampling, synthesis and stuff like that, and I tend to use this to be the starting point for most projects once I've got a drum track down. And what I'll do, I'll use this for bass, leads, vocals, everything. And what I'll do is I'll open Falcon and then I'll browse to the folder that I've created, or a folder that I've already got a bunch of sounds categorized in. So I've got like basses and drums and leads and things that I've already made in folders that I've created before. So I'll take a drum loop just to work with from the beginning and make sure that it's in tune. So then I'll draw in a note in Falcon. And I'll just flick through the sounds that I've got and start messing around with it, basically, getting a vibe going. That's quite nice. Adding some filters. So yeah, I'll add a bunch of filters. With an LFO or something. And I'll try and get a groove going, because I love things that are funky and things that fit in place and stuff. So I'll try and get a cool groove going and have sounds that fit and do interesting things groove-wise in there. And I'll create another instance of Falcon and just start layering things up like that. I also use Falcon a lot for bass, so I'll take bass sounds that I've already made. I've got a folder here which is quite organized into different categories of bass sound, and also the names of the folders represent sound design sessions that I've gone in. So for example, I made a bunch of Reese's with this, and I've got them all sampled off here. So I'll just bring them in. And I'll try and get interesting modulations that fit with the groove that I'm doing with filters and stuff like that. This has got a cool thing called an expander filter, which has got loads of different types of filters, high passes, band passes, notches, stuff like that. It's quite similar to the old EMU filters, which we used to use back in the day to make sort of techie stuff. And you just get really cool textures and things like that with them. mean, that's very simple, but I'll go in a bit more and add envelopes and different LFOs and just really mess it up until I've got a good template, if you like, of different modulations and stuff, just to create new sounds and just get excited and inspired by it. I quite like to have happy accidents, if you like, while I'm working. So creating all these different modulations and things, and then interchanging the samples, if you like, on the fly. You know, you're just getting, you might hit a sound and be like, oh, that sounds wicked, I'm going to fly with that. And I'll just tend to sort of fiddle around with it for quite a while until I've got something solid that I'm really into. And again, I can use all the different sampler types, if you like. So you've got stretching, slicing, normal sample mode, stretch, scrub, multi-granular, granular. Let's put some granular in. Yeah, so I'll just keep flicking through that until I hit gold, until I hit something that jumps out at me and says, finish me. And then when I know I've got something that I'm just really into, quite often what I'll find is actually I'll kind of have a bunch of stuff down and a few different presets loaded and a few different things going on, and I'll sort of go away and do something else and then come back to it and press play, and it will sound 20 times better than it did when I was trying to do it. There's something about having a disconnect from what you're doing that I find really important. Because when you're sitting here tweaking around and fiddling for ages, it's very easy to get lost and sucked into it and overly concerned about what the knobs are doing as opposed to what it sounds like. And having a disconnect just almost focuses your mind back into what sounds good and not what should be technical or overly complicated or something like that. So yeah, I use Falcon extensively for everything. I mean, I'll get the vocals layered up in there, pads, even percussion, things like that. It's just great for creatively getting ideas down, sounds and ideas down. I think it's really cool. So that's all we've got time for on this video, but if you want to see the rest, then buy the latest copy of Computer Music Magazine.